Dr. D here with another video on music technology. Today we're going to talk about MIDI effects. MIDI effects are just like audio effects, things like reverbs and chorus and delay and distortion, etc., but they affect MIDI specifically. With MIDI, you basically trigger notes in different instruments with your MIDI controller or a keyboard. Whenever you press the note, it tracks when you start and it tracks when you let go. It also can track the dynamics, so whether it's quiet or you hit it very hard, sometimes the instrument will respond differently at a low dynamic or a louder dynamic. Also, the different keys, of course, play different pitches. So those are some of the things that you can manipulate with MIDI effects. So let's look at MIDI effects within Ableton Live. All right, so I got Ableton Live pulled up here. One of the first effects I want to show you is actually not a MIDI effect, but I use it a lot in MIDI instruments to manipulate and give some sort of moving, morphing quality to a MIDI instrument. So it is the LFO. So like I was saying, LFO is not a MIDI effect, but you will find the LFO under the Max for Live category, under the Max Audio Effects. So I'm going to go ahead and load in that. And what it does is it generates a wave sine or any other type of oscillating wave. So what I do is I will map this to a certain parameter on any plugin or device anywhere. So for instance, I have this operator synthesizer going. And as I change the level of the second oscillator, that is a square wave, it gives it some more buzz and bite. And I want that to sort of oscillate around and give it some movement while I'm playing the note and holding the chord. So what I will do is I'll click on the map button and then simply click on whatever parameter I want anywhere on this entire screen. I'm going to choose this level oscillator, and then when I play my MIDI, you can hear that happening. I can change the rate, I can change the depth, basically the amplitude of the wave, and I can also offset it to happen in the upper register or in the lower register of that pitch. Okay, so that's the LFO. Moving on to one of the more popular and highly used MIDI effects, the Arpeggiator. Arpeggiators basically automate a arpeggio of a certain chord. Okay, as you can kind of hear here, I've got this very fast arpeggiating chord. And you can change many aspects here within the arpeggiator. I'll just talk about the main ones. First of all, you can change the order at which the notes go. They go up or down and up, and in and out, converge, diverge, etc., etc. So it's going to basically build the arpeggio in that direction. You can also change the rate, which is how fast the notes arpeggiate. And there's some transposition and some velocity settings as well. But more or less, you're going to use this to arpeggiate a chord or add a sort of repeat to a certain melodic MIDI signal. Okay, cool. Moving on to the Chord Tool. So the Chord Tool is interesting because you can play chords with one note at a time. I have different pitch shifts on this chord MIDI effect, and what I can do, I'm going to reset it to 0. This is just the single note that I'm playing. I'm just playing a note here, and if I add maybe an octave to it, I want to have another shifted pitch on top of that. I'm going to use 12 semitones, which is a whole octave above the original note. And I can change the velocity and have more or less of that second pitch laying into my original pitch. Maybe I do a fifth above that original pitch as well in addition. So that's going to be 7 semitones. So that's a fifth there, a power chord more or less. so I can add a chordal aspect to my notes, give it a little bit more depth, almost like overtones. I can add octaves above, maybe 2 octaves above, maybe over here, see if I can do that and get a really high octave of that original. So it's kind of building up overtones and changing the timbre, or it could be used to just straight up make a chord. Now these chords are going to work in parallel, so if I have like a root, a third, and a fifth, it sometimes works nicely in certain keys, in other keys not so much. Okay, so that is the chord tool. Moving on to the note length. This is exactly what it sounds. Note length will allow you to change and automatically control the lengths of the notes. Whether they're short or they're long, they bleed into each other. Okay, you can also adjust the gate to make the note a little bit more short. So if you want a very staccato articulation or legato, you can kind of manipulate that with the note length. Okay, moving on to the next one, we have pitch. Pitch is very simple. It's basically going to pitch up or down the notes that you are playing live or sequencing in a MIDI loop. Okay, this also happens in live performance too. So if I want to play in the key of D, even though I'm in the key of C on my keyboard, I can pitch up 2 steps and go into the key of D. Okay, pretty easily. So I can play in a different key and just use the notes in C major if I'm not a great keyboardist. Okay, random. This is another MIDI effect. It basically randomizes the notes that are being played in your sequence. So as I crank up the chants, it's going to put more randomness into my melody. And you can see this little dial, this meter here that's showing notes that are above or below that are randomly chosen. And the more choices, the more randomness that's happening. Different pitches. I can also control whether it's adding notes above that are random or notes that are below that are random. And I can use both of those and then scale it up in different octaves, in different extremes. Okay, so that's the random audio effect. Another one that's kind of fun to use is the scale audio effect, MIDI effect, that is. And if I have my melody cooking again, you can see the notes of my... Let me set this back to the starting point. Let's pull in the MIDI effect for the scale again. You can see the notes that I've played in this melody repeating and the blocks showing yellow as they're played. I can pick and choose the specific notes that I will transpose. So I can easily kind of adapt a couple wrong notes or change my scale from minor to major by using the scale MIDI effect. All right, cool. Moving into the final one here, velocity. This MIDI effect, it basically allows you to manipulate your velocity, which is like the dynamics of your notes. So certain instruments, software instruments will react differently depending on how hard you hit the note. So I have a Fender Rhodes keyboard loaded up here, and if I hit it softly, it makes a very warm sound. If I hit it very hard, it gets kind of a more harsh, bright, distorted sound. So if I want more or less of that, I can change the drive, which will basically round the velocity or the dynamics up or down. So if I round it up, I'm going to get more of those harsh sounds without exerting the extra effort, just by tapping lightly. Now if I round it down, it's going to round most of those sounds down to the quiet realm. And I really have to punch it hard to get the distortion. So the comp knob here, this is compand. And compand, basically, the higher values of this expand the high and low dynamic extremes. So if I want extremes from like really quiet to really loud, basically there's no middle ground anymore. It's just soft, loud. It kind of changes the extremes of that. High and low, these will basically round everything up to the highest dynamic. So if you want your keyboard sounds to always be the super harsh dynamic, or if you want it always to be the super low dynamic, you can set that to do that. All right, cool. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. That has been a quick lesson on using MIDI effects in Ableton Live. Go make music and have fun. Peace. We'll see you next time.